18 minutes behind enemy lines, 90 seconds to live. At 15:45, everything was routine, until the cockpit lights exploded like a Christmas tree in an ambush. Today, you're stepping inside the cockpit of a warplane on a mission that turns deadly in an instant. Stick around, because this is precision, courage, and pure survival. 2 minutes into enemy territory, warnings of voltage surged through the weapons interface as a Ukrainian MiG-29 yanked sharply left. Until then, the mission to destroy a drone factory felt under control. But then the screen flagged a new threat, an S-300 radar announcing itself 95 kilometers out. A countdown had begun. The pilot pitched the nose down, hugging the terrain at just 150 meters altitude, weaving through hills and power lines. On his thigh, a ruggedized tablet displayed the map, route, and a ticking timer. Under the wings, 4 GBU-39 precision bombs, ready like sharks sensing blood. But each one had to pass 3 checks: lock GPS signal, calibrate inertial navigation, and link to the plane's improvised interface. Ideally, that took 30 seconds. Now, the timer read 120 seconds, an eternity in a cockpit if enemy radar is breathing down your neck. Seconds later, all 4 bombs lit up green. The tablet locked in the target's coordinates. A facility 350 kilometers deep in occupied territory, capable of producing 40 Shade-1 36 drones per week. Intelligence had also warned an enemy Krasuka-4 electronic warfare system was operating there, jamming GPS frequencies with 500 kilowatts of interference. The fuel gauge showed enough for 2,100 kilometers, just enough to complete the mission and escape. But releasing the ordnance meant entering a deadly no-fly zone. The radar umbrella snapped shut. The S-300 widened its sweep. From the southeast, an SA-15 began scanning the valley like a patient hunter. In 6 minutes, he'd have to climb to 4,600 meters to release the bombs, exiting the terrain's shadow and exposing himself to every battery in the area. He had a narrow temporal corridor. If he hesitated, the mission would collapse. The GBU-39s could glide up to 110 kilometers from that altitude. But first, he had to survive the climb. Their world was now thick with electromagnetic interference, capable of frying ordinary electronics. At that moment, an electrical surge hit the instruments, 31 volts for 3 seconds, until the voltage regulator tamed it. The adapters on the pylons spiked to 32 amps on a line built for 20. Beneath the panels, an improvised tangle of wires, filters, and scavenged connectors struggled to adapt Western bombs to Soviet-era avionics. It was ad hoc engineering, merging 2 incompatible worlds mid-flight. The pilot pushed the throttles. The RD-33 engines roared, each pushing out 8,260 kilograms of thrust. At 15:51, he crossed the contested zone's threshold, and every Russian alarm long dormant roared to life. S-400 radar from Melitopol, Mobile S, A-15 batteries sweeping fast, and the first invisible tendrils of Krasuka-4 began shredding GPS signals. 19 minutes separated him from either glory or silence. 4 precision weapons hung beneath a 40-year-old Soviet airframe, retrofitted with salvaged parts. Before him, the most formidable air defense network outside Moscow, ready to swallow him whole. At 16:15, he banked right and slipped into an 8-kilometer-wide corridor, a fissure between ridgelines where radar coverage thinned. 7 minutes of surgical flying followed. 2 kilometers left, and the Western S-300s would see him. 3 kilometers right, an SA-15 would have line of sight to shoot. There was no margin for error. Gravity and terrain were both ally and enemy. The S-400 near Melitopol couldn't see below approximately 240 meters at this distance. Earth's curvature shielded him. He held the MiG between 120 to 160 meters, adjusting controls with micro-precision. At 16:18, radar warning tones shifted. A mobile SA-15 froze, suspicious of the coverage gap. They lit the 9S-36 radar and began scanning the valley. The pilot dropped lower, to approximately 120 meters, and pulled into a brutal 4G turn, crushing him into his seat. The climb to 4,600 meters commenced. The moment he rose into radar sight, the entire panel erupted. The S-400's fire control radar locked on, blasting electromagnetic energy until the aircraft's radar began to overheat. His clock ceased being a timepiece. It became a countdown to death. 90 seconds remained to reach the release point before entering the S-400's lethal zone. If he crossed without releasing the bombs, a long-range missile would turn him into burning wreckage in 24 seconds. No thinking. Drop on time or die. But none of this was accidental. It was choreography. 45 minutes earlier, Ukrainian Su-24s had slammed HARM missiles into radars near Tokmak. Several antennae went dark. Ukrainian EW teams flooded Russian screens with false echoes, ghost targets entering from the northwest. While all eyes looked there, a lone MiG flew via a different vector. The plan: create 90 seconds of radar invisibility. It was simple to describe, brutally hard to pull off. The pilot leveled, prepped release. At 4,600 meters, crosswinds gusted 30 kilometers per hour. 2 minutes of fuel left to survive post-drop. No hesitation. He tilted the wings. The GBU-39s ran their final checks. 5 satellites locked, 3-meter accuracy, green lights across the board. The jamming buzzed, dirty and intrusive. But the release window stayed open. The nearest SA-15 battery lay 41 kilometers southwest, near, but not instant. The S-400 was breathing on GPS bands, ready to fire, but any missiles would arrive 30 seconds after the bombs left the plane. For 10 minutes, Krasuka 4 had blasted GPS bands, L1 and L2, with 500 kilowatts, drowning out signals. Yet the bombs were built to survive that noise, combining GPS backup, inertial navigation, and hardened filters. The pilot exhaled, adjusted drift by 1 degree, and pressed release. The first bomb dropped clean at the right pylon. Its GPS receiver instantly hit the interference. But the bomb's brain switched seamlessly to inertial navigation. Gyros and accelerometers mapped the trajectory like a memory. At 82 kilometers, operators of Krasuka 4 remained clueless. Their jamming had no effect. Exactly 2.7 seconds apart, bombs 2, left pylon, 3, center, and 4 dropped, transforming from ballistic drops into guided glide weapons. Each followed its own trajectory, striking from different angles like invisible pincers. A deadly ballet, choreographed to overload enemy defenses. They had 89 kilometers of hostile airspace to cross, and they did so flawlessly, one after the other, every 30 seconds. Then the pilot inverted the plane, yanked 5G, and dove into the ground. Each downward meter was another second of life. The radar warning tone shifted. The SA-15s stopped searching, now tracking him. At 16:29:15, the closest battery launched 2 9M9 missiles. Interception time, 45 seconds. But once he slipped behind the ridgeline, the missiles lost him, and eventually self-destructed. From there, survival was assured. The bombs flew at 180 meters per second, each guidance computer updating 20 times per second, cross-referencing inertial readings against onboard waypoints. They hit within 8 meters of their planned paths, despite the world's most intense EW environment. At 16:32:44, the first bomb found its target. Its infrared sensor, though uncooled, spotted a metal roof radiating more heat than its surroundings. The algorithm confirmed it was the right target with 94% certainty. Tail fins adjusted. It angled at 68 degrees, ready to pierce the roof. 28 seconds later, the second bomb struck an electronics workshop, where Iranian autopilot systems were programmed. Without those boards, The drones are nothing more than expensive models. The explosive charge penetrated the reinforced roof, destroying delicate programming stations in a hail of shrapnel and overpressure. The third bomb hit the warehouse storing 15 to 20 Shahed 136 drones. A 40-kilogram explosive charge triggered a secondary chain reaction. Drones detonated simultaneously, wiping out inventory, logistics, fuel, spares, maintenance gear worth millions of rubles. Gone in seconds. The fourth bomb delivered the final blow, targeting substations, data links, auxiliary systems. Krasuka 4 operators heard only fire and chaos. The facility trembled with multiple near-simultaneous explosions. Their jamming continued, but the bombs were built to endure the noise, inertial fallback, and hardened electronics. The factory was destroyed. The mission succeeded, but survival wasn't assured yet. At 1634, the pilot leveled at 120 meters, with only 750 kilograms of fuel left. The tactical display showed 180 kilometers to Ukrainian airspace. Economical flight would give 12 minutes, but economy wasn't an option. Smoke columns rose 900 meters behind him, the inferno still raging. He descended into the nearest valley, sticking to the terrain. Less horizon means less radar. Silence on the radio. He set the transponder to stealth. Countermeasures stood at the ready. Radar contacts flickered, some seconds-long sweeps before breaking over the next ridge. Each beep a reminder he was being hunted. Then, the plane's SP-15 radar lit with red warnings. The 9 M9 missiles reached Mach 2.8, but he held the advantage. Low, fast, 120 meters above ground, hidden by folds in the terrain. The missile seekers lost lock before the 15-kilometer engagement zone closed. Behind him, Su-35s were launched to intercept. In theory, they had him, but they needed 8 minutes to reach intercept point, by which time he'd be 75 kilometers closer to home. And while R-77 missiles have range, locking on a target at 120 meters altitude, the trap was obvious, and he didn't take it. At 1638, the MiG crossed the Molosna River. The SA-15 batteries lost lock. Their missiles self-destructed. The Su-35s flew on, but ineffective. Afterwards, the report was simple. The GBU-39s hit within 12 meters of intended impact. Krasuka 4 performed as designed, but couldn't beat weapons engineered to withstand interference. The rest was human. Ukrainian engineering transformed a 40-year-old jet into a surgical strike platform. Where there was routine and fear, now there was timing and resolve. As the final smoke columns faded into the sky, one brutal truth remained. In modern war, survival belongs to those who read the map, not those with the biggest arsenal.